Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at the Brutalist architecture office. That's one of the free assets for the month of July 2023. There is a documentation, some video. Normally goes for around $65. The size is about 1.3 gigabytes. Going to the showcase level, let's increase the brightness first. You can get close to these and to the assets, and they don't break detail for most of the parts at least. These are like desks, lights, vending machine, couch, tables, and mostly office stuff. You can see the details are pretty high. And modular as well, so you can merge them together. These are the foliages, not the best that I've seen, but it still looks pretty good. These are the background building. They're not high quality. They were made to be just background buildings. Looking at the collisions, they're really good. I really like it. They cover the shape pretty well. And even the spaces in between, they don't take that so pretty well. We're going to the lighting only view mode. We have to disable nanite files first to view it properly. And should be working now. Cache modeling. Let's re-enable nanite for the meshes. I do it through the script editor utility, and that actually increases the meshes that support nanite, because I think for compatibility with 5.0 the foliages and masked materials were not made into nanite. Looking at the folder structure, the blueprints, the maps, the blueprints are kind of heavy. We're gonna go back probably last or before last. Got the materials, the models and textures. Let's look at the dimension of the textures. The 11 4K textures, 131 2K and 55 1K, 1512 and 256. Generally they are base color, normal, and metallic, roughness, ambient occlusion, and a mask in one texture. And this is what I was talking about, some of them having masks in the alpha. It's a trade-off between size and texture sampler. Just note that the metallic is in the red channel and the ambient in blue, opposite to what's what the normal packing methods are. Looking at the vertices, they're generally less than 5,000. The UV channels, they're except for that three, all of them have one. The other one is for light map probably. They're usually less than two material. Looking at the UVs, they're well packed with almost no wasted space. There are some parts that are reused or overlapped, which is pretty nice to see. This wooden bookshelf is a pretty nice example. It's like a middle ground between reusing UVs and having unique parts, because all they are like partially overlapped. And these like ducts are also the same. It's worth noting that almost all the duct parts are using one material, and with nanite that decreases. Draw mesh draw calls, it's one unique material per draw call for nanite. Can look at the stats in rendering, and even though there's like 250 something meshes here, the draw calls is around 102. Looking at the materials, we got some decals, some effects, and these are the master materials. I can just probably filter them like this. This is for the fabric, like the curtains, the lights. This slime and the structure. This for the wooden trunks. About this emissive part, that's the part I don't really like. I don't know why there is a parallax occlusion in there. Looking at the material instance, you can see we disable the texture, change the colors, choose the modulation. You can use random color and the random amount, and using a per instance to give variation per instance, using the texture palettes. Also, the mask is used for emissive, so you can decrease the part of the emissive and still somewhat retain it and makes it emissive. You can also add detail normals. There is the roughness control, tiling. You can use top layer for dust, although I think it's too whitish, so you can change the blending, or there is some material some parameters here to decrease the brightness. You can change the color, of course, but decrease the brightness, also decrease that whitish variation. Those normal. It's worth noting that this is position based. If you rotate the mesh, this effect will apply to the parts of the mesh that are facing upward to the Z positive of the world. We have to disable nanite first to change the vertex color. Okay, let's fill it like this, and okay, made a mistake there. Okay, finally. You can mask out some materials, some colors based on the vertex color, red channel. This is for the structure master material. You can add the fake damage and stuff, or the artificial damage. Although I don't know, for this model I couldn't get it to work properly. Going over to the damage, you can change the color and the amount to see which channel is being used for it. Can use texture for the damage, and also roughness. Using the ground dirt layer, can change the base color of this. Changing the power, and there are multiple parameters to control it. You can give some nice variation. So you can tinker with those settings. Also, dust, I think it's like the previous one. The previous one was based on the prop material, master material. This is based on structure, but the implementation should be similar for the dust. If I'm not mistaken, this is also world aligned for these effects, not the base colors. This effect was for like rust, these ground effects, because the stairs are also and some of the metallic parts are also using these. This is pretty nice. You can change the layers. There are 3 layers, and each one like controls some of the parts. I actually didn't have time to dive in how the material is set up for this. Okay, let's try the vertex color for this one. So the alpha is adding that effect. Actually, I forgot which one is which. Okay, red is for that. green seems to make it the other. Blue doesn't seem to do that much stuff. But yeah, blue doesn't do. It doesn't do anything. And this vertex alpha, let's see. Yeah, I don't see what that changes. Adding in or enabling the water or a puddle, can tinker with these parameters to get something that kind of resembles water. You can also change the speed and add in acoustics, and of course you can control the speed. I think I need to adjust the blending or the contrast. Yep, now it resembles running water. Let's change it back to the original material, just the lightening of the level, and going into the prepared blueprint assets. Start with the furnitures. These are the lights. You can change the color of the light. May not be that apparent, but if you look at the floor, this is for, you can change the type of the plant or the orientation. You can make it random whether it's turned on or off. There's a desk with many variations of the parts. It's not worth noting that these are using mesh sockets. So if you take a look at the individual mesh, it has many sockets for adding different parts to the correct place. And this is the vending machine. You can also change the color of it and the light inside of it as well. And when you move the content as well inside the item contents into the environment, starting with the doors, you can change the color and you can lock it, or add in the hinge mode is like a physics constraint. Basically you push it gets pushed when the pawn hits it. Pillars, you can change the height, the colors, and the individual mesh that makes it up, and adding some debris here and there. And interestingly, this pipe spline, you can change how many parts it have, the seed, and the tracing mode kind of traces it. If it hits something, it kind of adjusts to it. Let's change it to planar. I think it runs horizontally. Change it to all, it goes vertically. Yep. And you can change the start rotation, which basically rotates the entire thing. Change the tracing distance and the color. These are some settings you can play with. The individual mesh that makes them up. The same goes for the double pipes and the vents. You can also change the debris. This is a debris blueprint, changing the size, density, and stuff. The sign, you can change the color of the sign, the color of the text and light, and also the text and the arrows direction and the text. This is a blueprint spline for the couch. You'd adjust them as you would with any other splines. So make a circle or rectangle, whatever shape you want to make with the spline. This is the stairs. I'll pick this metallic one, and if you take a notice, it happens around the pivot. You can remove the railings on the right or left along with the support, and you can add support or not, changing the colors. This electric stuff, you basically add actors to it and just select it. It will run wire directly to it. This is the foliage wrapper. Let's change the bounds of it. Now these blueprints are all really nice, but because of PCG, now I think everyone is doing this with PCG, but it's pretty nice to be provided like this. Change the densities and stuff along with either the sides, like the densities for the sides or the edges go into the building. Let's start the scaffold. I'm not going to take a look at everything, but the concept should be similar for all of them. You can change the floor amount, the width and the length. You can use the planning mode to make it fast to generate stuff, and when you're done, just untick it for it to generate. Go into the main building. Let's go to outlet mode, faster performance. You can see each floor the stairs is the same at the same place, but you can change that. I'll show how. You can change the floor, the width, and the length, like the previous, like the scaffold. Construct on a roof. I mean, each part is separated, so we can adjust it. The floor, we can have cutoffs. That's useful if you want to have like a double floor or a really high floor, and these stairs also regenerate with it. And add pillars, changing the pillar density, adding furnitures, and the roof meshes. You can adjust the arrays to add your own stuff. For example, you can manually add this room or add it in. Let's take a look at the color first. Since we are here, each one controls something, so all of these are modifiable. You can also adjust the grunge effect and change the material if you so like. You can add the room somewhere in these arrays. I mean, obviously this is not the most customizable one, but it gives you a lot of options to make a building quickly. Go to the example map and playing it. I removed the head bob node from the character blueprint. It was kind of jarring. But when you get close to these objects, you can hold E if your bindings are correct, and it will pick it up. Yeah, unfortunately those doors cannot be opened. If you want to go out, this door is locked. That's easily can be fixed. You can click on the vending machine or interact with it. Also these elevator doors, however there are no elevators inside, so you have to make that on your own. This is like the hallway that connects it to the industrial part of the building, or like the, I don't know what it is called. Yeah, really cool showcase. You can go into first person mode. We can also interact with lights, turn them on or off, and anything that had like an that has interactability should change something. Can zoom in. Also, let's test the doors that I was talking about with the normal doors and with the hinge. The hinge means physics constraint. So yes, starting with the one. Yep, this one's locked. Like we clicked, and this is interactive. When you press E, it opens and closes. Doesn't interact when we physically hit it. However, for the hinge type or the physics constraint, it doesn't. Even if it shows something, it doesn't interact when you click it. But when you hit it, it does open and close. Now it's worth noting that there are some settings that are required to make it work, like having distance field, which shouldn't be a problem if you're using UE5 Lumen, and debuffer decals in the project setting, which are all included in documentation, which is a really nice one, by the way. Speaking of the pack itself, I think the modeling is okay. I really like how it's modular for most of the parts. The functional blueprints are a really nice plus. Although because of PCG, you can do some like in kind of a more modular or interactive way yourself now. But having it already made for you is a big plus, and the setup is cool. The rich material settings with and it's kind of not that heavy, to be honest. I expect it to be heavier, but the author does take performance into account. One thing I think I didn't show properly is that this has the meshes do have LODs, so if you are not using nanite, that shouldn't be an issue. Along with the mesh sockets for the placement. The collisions, I really liked it. Very nice. And then the UVing and the reusing of the UV texture space, excellent in my opinion, one of the best. No doubt about that. And there was like minimal UV wasted. The using of texture masks for emissive is really a nice addition. I almost always ask for it. If there is something that needs mask, please use texture masks instead of extra material slots. And the way the materials are reused, because of how nanite works, this leads to a reduced mesh draw cost like I showed. There were a few things that I didn't like or would have liked to be better. One of them was the light master material. I don't know why there was a parallax occlusion there. It just doesn't look right for me. There are no options to control the strength of the normals. Although nanite is enabled by default for UE5 versions, it's still relatively low poly, especially on the edges. I would have liked them to be smoother. Speaking of nanite, I would have preferred if the translucent windows were separated from the window meshes, so you could enable nanite on those as well. And hope that it was using enhanced input for UE5 versions as well. And two things to note is that the texture for the metallic roughness, ambient occlusion, was that metallic is in the red channel, and that's like the opposite of what's most popular. So you have to be careful when you use it with if you want to use the master material with your textures from other packs. And it does use mesh sockets for placement. So if you want to have if you want to add your own meshes, you probably would have to add some sockets to them. So you have to be aware of that if you want to use the blueprints for it. And that should have been it. I hope you enjoyed.